In Moscow, visiting Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki has met with Russian leaders for discussions on energy cooperation and security. Al-Maliki has told Russian President Dmitry Medvedev that Iraq was interested in Russian investment. The Iraqi government has promised that Russian companies would not be discriminated against in bidding for oil and gas development licenses. Al-Maliki also met with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. The two signed a joint communiqué calling for the establishment of a new world order. The two sides also reached agreements on anti-terrorism, transport organized crime, illegal drug trafficking and arms dealing.
Now, the Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki is due to meet with President Dmitry Medvedev in a few hours' time. The main subject of their discussions is expected to be Russian investment opportunities in Iraq, particularly in the oil sector. Many contracts that Russian companies had with Iraq were suspended when the US and its allies invaded in 2003. Let's talk a little bit more about what could be on the table of these discussions. Oksana Boyko is joining us now from the centre of Moscow. Good to see you there, Oksana. Now, we know the talk is about generating business, as I just mentioned. What in particular?
Well, just before leaving Baghdad, Nouri al-Maliki indicated that he may be willing to discuss a possibility of renewing some of the old Russian contracts that Russian companies signed with Saddam Hussein regime. Now, this is something that Russian government has been lobbying for quite some time. A couple of years ago, Russia even wrote off a very large chunk of Iraqi debt, hoping that it would bring it some concessions, some preferences. But as for the Iraqi authorities, they so far have been quite elusive on this subject, not saying yes, but also refusing to say a definite no. But this time around, there are some signs that the situation may be a bit different because Nouri al-Maliki himself is under increasing pressure, domestic pressure to restore his country, and for that he needs money and investment, and also he needs to reinstate his country position on the international stage to prove that Iraq may have its own independent foreign policy, and for that he may need Moscow's diplomatic support.
Yeah, and it's not all about oil and gas deals, is it? Obviously two-way deals as well. We're hearing that Iraq is interested in buying Russian military hardware. How far advanced are those negotiations, do you know?
Well, this is a very interesting point, probably the most interesting aspect of these talks in Moscow. You know, back in the 70s and 80s, Saddam Hussein bought a lot of Russian military hardware. In fact, according to some estimates, about 80% of equipment and weapon systems in the Iraqi army back then were of Soviet origin. Now, in 1991, Russia suspended all arms deals with Iraq when the United Nations introduced sanctions against this country. But most recently, Iraqi authorities have been indicating that they are willing to restore negotiations on that front. Here's exactly what a spokesman for the Iraqi government said on the possibility of any arms deals with Russia.
Iraq wants to sign an arms deal with Russia. That's one of the main priorities in the development of our relations. We acknowledge that Russia is a different country now, and Iraq has changed as well. I know that Prime Minister Putin has the intention of developing relations with Iraq. The cancellation of debt is a clear sign of that.
Now, this announcement may sound surprising to some, especially considering that U.S. troops are still very much in control of Iraqi territory militarily. But there are also some signs that the Pentagon is very much aware of these talks in Moscow, and that it even supports projects like these financially. Now, a couple of days ago, a Russian company signed a major deal to supply 22 military helicopters to Iraq, the Mi-17 military helicopters that can be used both for transportation and assault operations, and the money for this project, about $80 million are being provided by the Pentagon.
Okay, well, Oksana Boyko, very much across this story today. Thanks for that. Coming back to you later. Now,